Hi, David Toulis. Our show is Newgonomics.com. We cover local economy from the bow tie perspective. That is what I do every weekday here from 1 to 3 o'clock at the Copperhead station, the little station that could, the little media entity not owned by a giant player, by a corporation that siphons profits out of local economy and dumps it into the billfolds of wealthy moguls in faraway places. No, the unwealthy mogul that we prosper here is the independent-minded man that owns, or who owns, our little station, and whom we are trying to prosper. We are here to make him succeed as an entrepreneur. And I am, in fact, here entrepreneurially. I'm not on anybody's payroll. I'm here at risk, which means my own capital is at risk as I find new ways each day and at other times, other than our getting together here, to prosper you, my listener. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about the owner of Copperhead 1240, Confederate Mike, we call him affectionately. And our goal is to understand how the marketplace works and do it in a context of local economy, freshening our discourse with the drip of ink from the local press. And ink is what I have staining my fingertips, by the way. My name is David Toulis. I'm a former newspaper editor. Most of my career as a professional, now I'm unprofessional, but most of my career as a professional has been in the newspaper business, editor, writer, and now having left the newspaper business, the establishment media, I carry those credentials, of course, and I'm dealing with tiny audiences. Number one, there's you, and then there is several hundred homeschool families here in Chattanooga who every month or so get a newsletter off the desks of my wife and me. We hope to encourage people to take matters into their own hands, to live out the local economy ideal in the education sector. Because after all, our audience on that front is comprised of Americans. Americans are very can-do people if they would just remember their heritage, remember where they came from, and pick up the good sense that I think many of them have just laid on the side. They've laid it aside, and they've let good people think for them. Good people in Washington, even good people here in Hamilton County. Among those would be the county commission. The front page of the story today has a headline, School Talks Turn Quickly to Taxes. There's a photograph of Rick Smith, the public school superintendent. Remember, the word superintendent is a word laden with meaning. It doesn't just mean he's the boss, but it means that he intends in a superior way. He intends something, and of course other people beneath him intend things too, but he superintends. His intention is a superior form and caliber. His is a super variety of intention. The teacher, the good Christian teacher whom your son enjoys in math, for example, she has an intention, but hers is superintended by his, and of course his is superintended by the General Assembly, by Title I, the various federal titles, and enforcers as far back as the Justice Department and other agencies which have a quasi-police, quasi-political authority, sometimes just suggestive, of course, but sometimes there is real coercive power applied from wonderful and amazing quarters in the American education or school industry. Now, what do we want to have more taxes for? The public factory school, the government school, the school run by the state, owned by the state, managed by the General Assembly under a constitutional provision that's 40 years old, stating that state government will provide a system of free public schools for the residents of the state. Do we want to increase taxes to pay for $200 million of improvements that Kevin Hardy, the Times Free Press writer, mentions just before the jump word? Or do we want to raise taxes to pay for $200 million more in new construction, as it's called, new construction, which would be more classrooms, more hallways, more janitor closets, more concrete, rebar concrete platforms upon which students can play ball and cross yards from one building to the other as the bell rings. Well, schooling is the old paradigm. Schooling is the pre-internet paradigm that is hanging on. It is hanging on for all its constituents are worth. And you have to remember that public schools have somehow overlooked the fact that the PDF exists. You know, we all have Adobe Acrobat readers on our computers, and most people can pay a little bit more for the paid suite of software from Adobe, and they can make PDFs. They can make PDFs that are very complicated, multi-layered, some layers locked. You know, there are all kinds of things you can do with a PDF. And the PDF exists and has existed for at least a decade. And yet public schools are still there. Well, and the reason they're still there is because of the power of inertia, the beauty of human custom, the way people are, whether individually or in mass. We know that inertia is a powerful force. And the old school, the factory school inertia is powerful. I know it's powerful individually because for my birthday, for Christmas, in December, I was gifted with a very delightful iPod Nano, so I can listen to sermons and books and things on the road, since I'm often on the road as a account executive for our little radio station, Copperhead 1240. And you know what? That thing is still on my desk. I did one practice run downloading a file onto it, but I'm so used to listening to CDs of books and tapes of lectures and things that I get through the public library that I haven't gotten around. I know it's embarrassing. I've not gotten around to actually field testing my new Nano, for which my sweet wife Jeanette spent over at least a bill with a 100 on it and Lincoln and Franklin's engraved face on the front, at least $100. Well, in the story that Kevin Hardy has on the front page of the paper today on The Jump, there's a picture of a very nice looking Commissioner Warren Mackey, and the cut line is that he's expressing his concerns Thursday at a joint school board and Hamilton County Commission meeting. And one of his concerns is that in his district, which has many poorer people in it, they're called lower income, there doesn't seem to be a plan to build anything, and concerned that his constituents are being overlooked by the smooth operation of the school machine. He's worried about they're not being fairly treated. The story quotes Jeffrey Wilson, a school board member, who says it's not morally right that some kids go to school in nice, beautiful buildings every day, and some kids go to schools where I would be embarrassed to show people. And the idea of a tax increase, of course, is somewhat humiliating to people like you, my listener, the dad, right? You're you work hard. You work in your business. You work to serve the customer. The customer is the one you are seeking to improve. You're trying to reduce his costs and make his operations go more smoothly, run more cheaply. And the idea of raising taxes for the factory school is a little bit humiliating to you because you have to account for costs. You're constantly trying to economize, trying to squeeze value out of every dollar that you spend and invest, and to make your revenues go further in your operation. Well, public schools don't have that exactly. They work in a kind of cost blindness. They're not, because they're paid for by taxation. They have a guarantee revenue stream. They don't have to account for costs. And so the 42,000 students in Hamilton County cost you, my listener, a part of $10,000 per student. You spend half your land tax bill, which has to be mailed today, by the way. Your county city property tax payment, the last day it can be mailed is the 28th of February. Well, half of that goes for the public machine. And so why is that not enough? Well, the alternative vision, which we talk about at Nuganomics.com, is to have a free market in education. That would cut taxes in the county by half. It would cut taxes in Chattanooga proper by half. And think what a boon it would be to the local economy if people heard about the exit of this county, this foresighted, insightful county, from the cartel, this dismal cartel, which has been building up resentment for years among the people for its inefficiency and its materialism. What would happen all around to our district of Tennessee if people knew they could come here and not spend hardly much on taxation, paying taxes for police officers, sheriff's department, the legitimate parts of government, right? Those are legitimate parts of government. The judges, right? Maybe the jail. That could be considered in general terms part of government. But the idea of raising taxes, of building, investing more borrowed capital from bond revenue in buildings is old school. It's old school, and it doesn't account for the fact that the university in 40, 50 years will be gone. There will not be any more universities as we know them today. And if we can let the skimmers, the people who run schools, and run state governments, if we can somehow bring an end to the spoils system, to use the term from Charles U. Smith, we will have real prosperity in Chattanooga. We will have a much more vibrant local economy because, in fact, the existence of a giant cartel in schooling in this very important sector of the economy makes my ideas, my very weak and feeble notions about local economy somehow just ridiculous. The fact that public schools keep churning on every year without a revolt, without a mass exodus, the people content to be there, content to be served, makes the ideas of local economy just paltry. And so that makes my work hard because I'm promoting an idea for which there is which can't make any progress in the marketplace because of the cartel, the monopoly in public education, which is not forced upon Hamilton County. I think Hamilton County could exit the schooling business probably very profitably. You could probably sell off a lot of its buildings, pay off the bonds, and let the people make some of their own choices. If the people have grown up, public schools were brought about because people are not mature. People can't make decisions. People do not know how to choose services. People don't love their children enough to care about what they learn, where they are taught, who teaches them. They are, in fact, boobs and infants, the people. And so we have to make those decisions for them with our school system. I was thinking about this whole question about the school, and I wandered onto the Hamilton County Department of Education website. Do you know how business is often not free market at all? And that's why our show is not about business, it's about the free market, because many advocates for cartels, many supporters of them, are for-profit businesses, such as Unum, such as Blue Cross and Blue Shield. These are corporate partners, as they're called. Volkswagen is a corporate partner of the cartel. TVA, Chatham, First TN, that's the state-run business organization funded by taxpayers that leverages existing capital to fund new business. SunTrust Bank, EPB, Chattanooga Area Schools, Federal Credit Union, and there are other partners, including Memorial, IBEW, a Union, Alstom, Comcast, the big companies in Chattanooga. Some of them are governments, and they support this system. And so in other words, and it's thought that somehow schools need to be adapted. They need to be improved and reformed to help better the people who sell soap and pills. Right? Let the people who sell pills and shampoo control and have a say in the ideas that your children pick up in public school. Well, and when I say something about the idea of families being infantilized, in other words, turned into infants, just look at the family engagement plan by Hamilton County School. I think it's something required because the school business takes federal dollars, and since the federal government is so concerned about people and wanting people to be well treated, it has to have a family engagement plan. And there's a person whose job in the public school, LaQuisha Ewing, is involved in coordinating parent, school, and community involvement. Okay, you have a staffer who's paid to ingratiate the school system with parents and make parents sort of unpaid state employees, because after all, their children are in the public school. And now we need to have the parents to provide some casual conversation and boarding privileges in their houses for these students who spend most of their day in the school. And then after school, there's a consumption of time in sporting activities and extracurricular activities. Well, the document goes on to, it's about 8 or 9 pages, to explain that when parents are actively engaged in the school life of a child, that child performs better. I'd say that's very interesting, probably true. And among the goals of this system are to break down all barriers to parent involvement and to involve parents in all aspects of decision making at the school and district level. Do you think that's true? Does that happen? Keep parents informed of their children's academic achievement. Provide notifications in other languages for non-English speaking parents, and provide an updated website so that parents can follow what's going on in that important center of life, which is the government school. You see why a local economy, in a way, is a kind of a laughable idea. 42,000 children and their parental units are given over to the use of this free system, paid for by taxes, which it is hoped by some on the county commission will be raised. Will be raised to provide another $200 million in buildings and another $200 million in fresh tar on leaky flat roofs in some of the older buildings, and breaking walls as ground settles under the foundations of some buildings. The goal of this office is to, just by the way, invite agencies to participate in district and school level activities. So notice, these things are, the family is incompetent to have its own family life. You have to have the school system inviting agencies to participate in the district and school level activities. And even more, make referrals to parents for family needs. The school really knows best about how you should live your life, and if there's any kind of distress in your family, there's an agency out there to help you, a government-funded agency, maybe funded with some private or church money, and we'll get you involved with people who can really help you. And finally, we have in this goal number 2, include the community in aspects of decision-making at the school and district level. Is that not just a little bit of propaganda? Is that maybe just a little bit getting parents to volunteer in the school system? And there's another point. The Hamilton County Department of Education shall build the schools and parent capacity for strong parent involvement by providing training for administrators and teachers in parent engagement activities. Teachers and school administrators, half the staff is probably non-teaching. Okay, half the staff in that corporation doesn't teach, but there's still, for those who have interface with parental units, you have got to have some training for the administrators and the teachers, because this is a machine. You have to understand, these are not just people. The school system is not just your student's sweet-faced young Knox UT education graduate on her 3rd year now teaching math or civic. It's much more than that. These are just the faces. These are these good people, the fine Christian people who teach in the neon-lit classroom of your local school. He is a state actor and is given a lot of credit for good faith action. Well, I mentioned this problem of local economy in the education sector because, in a way, I fully admit that local economy is a weak idea. It's very, very weak. It is not efficient. It is not well organized. And yet I think my confidence is that it will work over time because people will be fed up with Chattanooga Organized for Action. Now, I'm not talking about the group Of course, that group, which meets in the Hamilton County Public Library on the 4th floor once a month for activist lectures and so on, they're gonna, they're working in the old paradigm as well. We have to get the state to do things. We have to have interventions by the state in every area, and we need to get ours too. Right? We need to get our part. It belongs to us. We want to get our fair share. That's kind of the framework of Chattanooga Organized for Action. But what we want to have is Chattanooga Disorganized for Action. Okay, and by that I mean let's understand that we have to make prosperity for ourselves. We can't glom onto others. We can't glom onto programs to prosper. And when the next meltdowns hit, we need to understand that we're ever more on our own. We're on our own already, but we think somehow that we've got this lifeline going over to Nashville, to Washington. But the free market really does matter. And speaking of the free market, I just want you to realize that if you love your neighbor, you're going to tend to shop local. This is one of my theories here at Nuganomics.com. My name is David Toulis. Our show and our website is Nuganomics.com. If you have a death coming in your family and you have some connection with it, or you may not be the executor, but you know who he is, and I would like you to recommend someone. Okay, recommend the Hamilton Funeral Home for the service of your funeral, mortician, death care problem. It is going to be a problem when that old soul dies and goes on to glory, hopefully. And you have a locally run, locally managed funeral home to help you. Call Hamilton Funeral Home. That's on Hickson Pike. Josh Jennings is one of the owners, and his number is 531-3975. Just call, let them know what's coming up, or let them know of what has just befallen your family in its grief, and he will help you. 531-3975. And when it is Friday, when you have some of these obligations taken care of and you want to give your sweet wife a break, may I suggest a local economy pizza shop? How about Jets Pizza, where the deep dish square pizza is a sure delight for all the members of your family. There'll be leftovers for tomorrow. I know Saturday is kind of a bad day for cooking. I'm often in charge of cooking at my house on Saturday. I do pasta and simple things. So Jets Pizza tonight, I call 757-1616. That's 757-1616. And as for car buying needs, you want to think about Capital Toyota. I've got a number I want to give you in the next hour where you can have a test drive for a Toyota, and you get $25 Target gift certificate for test driving a Toyota. And I've got a number. I just lost it for the moment. But my name is David Toulis. Our show is about local economy and the free market. And the local economy is a weak idea. We have to understand that it accounts on the secret organization of the marketplace, not the intentional organization of good people, of the smart people, of the elites, the college educated, the ones with the civil engineering degrees. No, we don't want them. We want to be able to have our own plans. We don't need a Thrive 2055 plan for Chattanooga, though there's some people who are busily working on that with the help of some multi-million-dollar PR budgets. Well, this is David Toulis, and we've got a lot to get to on jurisdiction.
Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR. And for ticket information, go to MRN.com.
Check it out this Sunday live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station, Copperhead 1240. Get 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on a 2014 Camry. This is unheard of. 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on a new 2014 Camry.
But you have to get the Capital Toyota on Lee Highway.
Get 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on a 2014 Camry. 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate.
Capital Toyota on Lee Highway, where the savings are that much better.
When your loved one dies, we in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She left us here. Death is so much more than a trying time, but we have to deal with it. You want a funeral home that helps you get through your ordeal. You want a professional, but not one who lacks warmth or sincerity. I'm Josh Jennings. That's what I offer at Hamilton Funeral Home and Cremation Services in Hickson. Care for you, a local owner and operator who keeps your funeral costs down. A great place at which to remember, even celebrate, the life of the one who's gone. Just call me, 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975. Hamilton Funeral Home. Oh, one more thing. Love your neighbor. Buy local.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducks, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duck Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duck Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality that you're breathing to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducks, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
Hi, my name is Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. I help people who want to be self-employed. I help my clients through a very fact-based and analytical process to understand all the criteria that's important to them. I then help them look at franchises or businesses that fit their criteria. Once my clients find the right opportunity, I help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying themselves through the startup phase. If you're just curious to understand the types of businesses that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My phone number is 423-875-5621.
With recent changes out of Washington, turn to E.J. Pelton Tax Service for help. Professional advice, confidential service, fair prices, someone to trust all year long. Call 332-3339. These are tax professionals and they're waiting to serve you. Or visit us at 10327 Dayton Pike in Saudi Daisy, across from the fire hall. Another office is on Brainerd Road. We guarantee our work. Call 332-3339. Online at ejpelton.com.
All right.
Think again.
Get the latest news and information now. On your Twitter account, search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's twitter.com. Then search Hot.
Hi, test drive a Toyota at Capital Toyota, and you will get a complimentary $25 gift card from Target. Call 888-404-9970. That's 888-404-9970 to get the associate on your calendar for a test drive of a new Toyota at Capital Toyota on Lee Highway, just at the foot of the airport runway. And of course, that dealership has sales, service, parts, detail center, collision center. If you have any kind of service work done at Capital Toyota, you get your car washed. And if you're someone like me, that's something desperately needed. My mother, 90, whose car I took over, often complains to me about how I have neglected to wash her car. She still calls it hers, though she has not renewed her license and has me take her on errands. We've been talking about the local economy, the folly of local economy, the paltriness of local economy, vis-a-vis this gigantic machine in Hamilton County, a government business that costs half of your tax bill, which you have to send in today, by the way. Half of the money that you write that check for goes to the cartel. And you may have no children in that system, but still, for the public good, for the welfare of all, for the sake of the free people of Tennessee, as we are called in the Constitution, you have to write that check to pay for a system, which is really all about dependence. It really teaches people a kind of materialism. And I was reading into a book that my son is reading. It was lying around where we had the fireplace going last night, and it's called Saving Leonardo by Nancy Pearcey. It's a call to resist the secular assault on mind, morals, and meaning. And a book caught my eye in here, Ernest Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms, which I think everybody reads as a high school senior. And of course, it's about the injured soldier in World War I. And there's a great discussion about naturalism and materialism as a kind of style. The naturalism and materialism affects Corbusier, the architect, for example, was behind a whole school of construction, in which buildings were not viewed as places for people, but rather machines. So an apartment complex that becomes a government slum is a machine for living, and a hospital is a machine for curing, right? And a school would be a machine for teaching. And as I was reading, there was a picture of the demolition of a government slum in Pruitt-Igoe housing development, blown up in 1972. The Bauhaus, that's the Bauhaus theory, where you have a scale that has no connection with people. And of course, the Soviet Union uses that idea in its endless government slums there now in Russia. And you have these glass towers in great cities where you have this sort of modernist theory applying. And as I was reading this discussion about how there's no sense of scale in modern materialism and naturalism, there was this picture of Ernest Hemingway's novel. And Hemingway is so interesting because he has this brute factuality. His whole style is just the facts. There's no spiritual life. There's no nobility. There's no God, of course. There's just men at the train station, right? And it's very physical. And naturalism is a writing style has a certain beauty to it, of course. Like Flaubert's writing style has beauty to it, and some of the other naturalists, they were very interested in facts. You didn't have meaning, and the writer, of course, didn't discuss spiritual questions or moral questions. It's all about just narrative. And often, the problem that you come into is if you're an artist that you can't connect things. If you have a play where people are just subject to their environment, as Piercy talks about a play in which the people can never make their own decisions, right? Because they're just the objects. They're controlled by their environment. It's very frustrating for the audience to endure a play of that kind. But there's a quote here from A Farewell to Arms that just really grabbed me. I couldn't find it in my own copy. I just didn't have time last night to locate my copy of A Farewell to Arms. But it's clear, she says, that he's embarrassed by words such as glorious, sacred, or sacrifice. And World War I, of course, did that to people. It turned them against ideals. And you say, well, boy, David Toulis certainly wasn't caught by that, being an idealist, which I admit that I am in some ways. But there's a character in Farewell to Arms who says, only the names of places had dignity. Certain numbers were the same way, and certain dates. Abstract words such as glory, honor, courage, or hallow were obscene beside the concrete names of villages, the numbers of roads, the names of rivers, the numbers of regiments, and the dates. And she says, what is this passage saying? The abstract ideals or concepts are unreal, empty rhetoric, pompous pieties, just downright embarrassing. That reality consists solely of concrete facts like names, numbers, and dates, brute facts. And that's why Hemingway is so alienating. He's so sort of not immoral really, but amoral. And for example, you can have an execution scene where a Spanish guard executes someone, and you have the man pull the trigger, the hammer cracks on the top of the pistol. There's a discharge. The gun jerks. The man on his knees before him falls to the ground. You have these sequence of events that they're not connected. So you see, there's not a question of whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a factual report. And public schools have that as one of their main ideas. But of course, there are people who run this machine, right? And they have souls, and so it can't ever be totally soulless. The soullessness of materialism of the kind that Hemingway talks about, and that really is essential for the modern machine to keep working, has always the steward of the machine, the worker who just is not quite going along with the program. And you have to assume that if you're caught up in that whole free cycle thing, the whole freebie thing that you're taking advantage of, that there is a kind of redemption in the disobedience to the premise, right? And that would be the teacher your son has, or the coach your daughter really cares about, and who cares about her. Those are personal relationships that break through the machine. But we have to understand that this this materialism, this materialist system is controlling, and we have to kind of fight against it. I would like to suggest we have to fight against it and not take the payoff. If we're going to ever have local economy, we have to drain ourselves of the ambition, the hope, the desire that seems to be fulfilled, the convenience that is fulfilled by the free school. And there's a kind of the price you pay. You could say the price I pay for having my children in public school are negative, but you could also call the things that are the price of the empty child. You could say that that's an advantage. Now I know you're asking me, what do you mean? How can you say my child is being emptied in school, and how can you call that an advantage? But it really is. If you have children coming out of the educational system who can think independently, who don't follow the crowd, who don't like groupthink, well, then you have someone who's really just causing trouble. He's non-compliant, and he's going to claim that somebody doesn't have jurisdiction. Think about that for a second. That causes problems. Later on, that causes lawsuits. That causes confrontations at roadblocks. That causes refusals to pay some illegal tax, refusal to obey some zoning order whose origins one finds comes out of some global elite confab in South America from the 1990s. You're going to have people who start resisting, and so that you don't want your child to be involved in that now, do you? You don't want your child to have an independent mind, do you? That might bring a bad reputation to your name. Your son may end up being in a headline somewhere as being arrested for non-compliance. You don't want that, do you? Well, the empty child is an important element of the public school result, and you can believe John Taylor Gatto, the New York City Teacher of the Year, in his accounting of some of these points. But the child is emptied in several ways. So here's just in a nutshell. Here's kind of what he's arguing for, and why I think you could either be glad your child is in the public school, or you could be maybe a little bit upset. It kind of depends on your perspective. Well, we were mentioning a moment ago how businesses are allies and supporters of props for the public system. Remove children from the business of the world until time has passed for them to learn how to self-teach. That's very important. Age grade them, Gatto says, so that past and future both are muted and become irrelevant. Take all religion out of their lives, except the hidden civil religion of appetite, he says, and positive negative reinforcement schedules. That's the Bell system. Remove all significant functions from home and family life, except its role as dormitory and casual companionship. Make parents unpaid agents of the state. Recruit them into partnership to monitor the conformity of children to the official agenda. Keep children under surveillance every minute from dawn to dusk. Give no private space or time. Fill time with collective activities. Record behavior quantitatively. Of course, that's the whole Common Core data mining agenda. Data mining is extraordinarily important to people. The more they know about children in mass, the more they can manipulate them, the more they can test out new theories, test out new vocabularies, new methods of suggestion. It's extremely important to have the system operate smoothly. And I know you want to be involved in that. You want to be helpful in that area. Use designed games and commercial entertainments to teach pre-planned habits, attitudes, and language usages. Pair the selling of merchandise with attractive females. This is in the whole world here, not just the school. In their prime childbearing years, to make so that the valences of lovemaking and mothering can be transferred intact to the goods vended. Remove as much private ritual as possible from young lives, such as the rituals of food preparation and family dining. Keep both parents employed in the business of strangers. Discourage independent livelihoods with low startup costs. Make labor for others and outside obligations first priority. Self-development is second. Grade, evaluate, and assess children constantly and publicly. Begin early, make sure everyone knows his or her rank. Honor the highly graded. I have lost interest in grades. I know my members of my family think they're important, but I think grades are irrelevant. They don't suggest anything, and I do not ask my children what their grades are. Either they know the material that they've read or they don't. And grades are irrelevant. But if you are part of that system and you want to continue to be involved in it, then you honor the highly graded. Keep grading and real-world accomplishment as strictly separated as possible, so that a false meritocracy, dependent on the support of authority to continue, is created. Push the most independent kids to the margin. Do not tolerate real argument. Think about discussions of evolution in the public school science class. Forbid the efficient transmission of useful knowledge, such as how to build a house, repair a car, or make a dress. Reward dependency in many forms. Call it teamwork. And then finally, he says in his great book, The Underground History of American Education, on page 381, establish visually degraded group environments called schools and arrange mass movements through these environments at regular intervals. Encourage a level of fluctuating noise, aperiodic negative reinforcement, so that concentration, habits of civil discourse, and intellectual investigation are gradually extinguished from the behavioral repertoire. That's what happens in the public school. That's what happens in the private school. Though you have to understand there are always exceptions, and we have to credit that to the fact that men and women, boys and girls, are made in God's image, and they can withstand the assault of the machine on their soul that empties them out. It is intended to empty you out. I'm not a private school person. I was never among the elite. I'm a commoner. David Toulis here at Nuganomics.com. I'm the slow man of Chattanooga. But I'm not the slow man because I was publicly educated all the way through master's degree. I'm the slow man because I really am slow, and I just don't get a lot of things. And I hope that the fact I'm slow is a benefit to you, my listener, and I do want to thank you for joining me. The number, by the way, at Capital Toyota, if you want to do a test drive today, call the number and get a test drive. You'll get as a compliment to you and your wife, a $25 gift card. The number is 888-404-9970. Make an appointment for a test drive, or just show up. 888-404-9970. And make sure you let people who advertise with me know that you are the listener at Nuganomics.com. You are the listener, and you are the important person in Chattanooga, because you have deigned to give me a couple of minutes of your time, and for that I'm grateful. There's a concept I just wanted to throw out right quick, touching on this question of what we call the thin layer of plaster. There's a thin layer of plaster that covers over gigantic fault lines in the American economy, the American legal system, and in American culture. And that plaster is what Charles Hugh Smith, who writes at of2minds.com, calls the spoils system. That's in a post today. The spoils system, he says, is not only the foundation of every elite's political legitimacy. It is the thin layer of plaster that covers all the long-standing ethnic, regional, linguistic, religious, and political fault lines that run beneath current nation-state arrangements. And it's a discussion about how collapse and you might say crumbling or even paralysis starts on the periphery at the margin and works its way into the center. And he says, since ruling elites are by definition constantly picking winners and losers, any status quo operated by elites is systematically malinvesting on a gargantuan scale. Think that the public school student in Hamilton County, any one of 42,000 costs $10,000 to school for a year. The real cost would be about $1,500 at the most, maybe 2,000. This is the ontological imperative of any elite. Skim as much of the national surplus as possible and funnel it to cronies and loyal toadies. The prudent elites and imprudent elites don't last long. The spoils system is quite Darwinian. Set aside enough surplus to distribute as spoils, effectively buying the complicity of key sectors, classes, and factions. Thus, the default policy of any ruling elite is bread and circuses. I would add public schools. Supply the potentially disruptive masses with food and entertainment, and they'll continue their grudging support of whatever arrangement is supplying the bread and circus. Any mob that appears, maybe your son, if he's different, might be part of that mob, that appears threatening can be dissipated with a whiff of grape shot. I've been listening to Jeff Sharer's book about the Battle of Shiloh, and grape shot is a terrifying element of that clash of gray and blue. In the U.S., he goes on to say, the spoils system is almost unlimited. Now, this is a kind of a priceless description, for which I really appreciate this particular analyst. Corporate welfare for capital, food stamps and SSI, disability for the lumpen proletariat, big bucks jobs as water carriers for the elites, for technocrats in the state, finance, think tanks, elite universities, and corporate America sectors. A variety of quasi-secure lower-level positions as enforcers, lackeys, apparatchiks, and factotums, and a smattering of tax subsidies, mortgage interest deduction, etc. to placate what's left of the non-state dependent middle class. And that's from an essay by Charles Hugh Smith, Why the Periphery is Crumbling and the Spoils System is Cracking. And he talks about why the periphery crumbles and the carrot and stick system, how that works. And he describes that whole system as a plaster that covers over major fault lines. The fault lines are great, and because my understanding of these fault lines is what it is, I left a paying job on a payroll downtown on East 11th Street at the Chattanooga Times Free Press to take up the investigation, if you will, of local economy. That's why we're here on our show. We are about local economy and the free market here and beyond, in Chattanooga and beyond. What I'm seeing is there are major disruptions ahead, disruptions that will be terrifying if you don't know what to look at in them. Okay, and I don't want the next meltdown to be viewed and considered by you with an incomprehending stare. You, my listener, you're the most important person here, and what I want to do is provide you with a sense of get a sense of your bearings, and because I have a prejudice and a bias, and that is, that is the free market. Behind that, of course, or should I say underneath that, the free market stands upon another presupposition, and that, of course, is that God is good. He is the creator, he's sovereign, he's there, and so you are not a Christian, I understand that, but you'll have to allow me to base my presuppositions on a point that is understood by the greatest of all sciences, which is theology. Theology is the study of God, and you don't have to go really hugely far to study God because He's given a manual that the Christians read a lot. Of course, that's the Bible. Now, I want to get to something that's going to be kind of complicated, but let me just kind of tease you on the point here. But first, let me just say that our show is Nuganomics.com. My name is David Toulis. Thank you for joining me. Our theory is that smaller is better than big, or that small is better than big, that personal is better than corporate, and that simple is better than complex. That is the theory of localism, the idea of nugacentrism. And nugacentrism is something that you can adopt. The word is not trademarked. Feel free to use it. If you are from another town, like Algonquin, Illinois, you could refer to Algonquin centrism. That would be, or if you are from Mundelein, Illinois, it would be Mundelein centrism. That would be how you would define it in your part of the world, wherever you might be from. If you are just traveling through Chattanooga and hearing my voice here at Copperhead 1240, or whether you watch our show live. We are live. We stream live. My name is David Toulis. Go to ustream.tv. That's ustream.tv. and /channel/Copperhead1240. That's ustream.tv/channel/Copperhead1240. I want to get into something really complicated, but here's the idea. How is it that the state has jurisdiction over you? How does it get jurisdiction over you, my listener? Maybe in your business enterprise, or maybe in your person. It's my argument on Nuganomics.com through various articles that it is by consent, and it is by a sort of presupposition of consent and an assumption of consent on the part of the regulator against you. And so, what's important to understand is that how you give consent. I'm not going to suggest that you try to escape commercial government. That's not my purpose here. I think you can do it, but my purpose here at Nuganomics.com is to explore the general premise of jurisdiction and how commercial government works. Because commercial government is a skimming operation. It's called also consolidated government. And consolidated government around the world, around the United States, has custody of more than $118 trillion of liquid capital. That's invested capital. The government is fabulously rich, and there are many people who ride shotgun on that money in banking houses, investment houses, law firms, accounting firms. And how can we have our own lives here in Chattanooga in local economy? How do we do that? That's my goal, to explore that. And I've got a question about a case of an ophthalmologist in another state. Great case.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR. And for ticket information, go to MRN.com.
Check it out this Sunday live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR
we gotta try to
radio station. Copperhead
go out?
1240.
Yep.
Get 0%
why don't you just
financing
look over-
and a $1,000 rebate on the 2014 Camry. This is unheard of. 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on the new 2014 Camry. But you have to get to Capital Toyota on Lee Highway. Get 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on the 2014 Camry. 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate. Capital Toyota on Lee Highway, where the savings are that much better.
When your loved one dies, we in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She left us here. Death is so much more than a trying time, but we have to deal with it. You want a funeral home that helps you get through your ordeal. You want a professional, but not one who lacks warmth or sincerity. I'm Josh Jennings. That's what I offer at Hamilton Funeral Home and Cremation Services in Hickson. Care for you. A local operator who keeps your funeral costs fair. A great place in which to remember, even celebrate a life in your life. Just call 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975. Hamilton Funeral Home. Oh, one more thing. Love your neighbor. Buy local.
Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh baked pizza. And in a flash, it'll take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out of Jet's in Hickson, or take home your steaming deep dish square pizza, you'll love Jet's. They use only the best ingredients in a family recipe. Also try the cheesy bread, wings, chicken, bread with bacon, antipasto or Greek salad. Jet's Pizza and Five Low near the S curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. You can order online or have it delivered. JetsPizza.com. That's JetsPizza.com. Or call them now. They'll have it ready when you get there. 757-1616. That's 757-1616. Hot and delightful above the clouds. Jet's Pizza. Now that's a 10.
With recent changes out of Washington, turn to E.J. Pelton Tax Service for help. Professional advice, confidential service, fair prices, someone to trust all year long. Call 332-3339. These are tax professionals and they're waiting to serve you. Or visit us at 10327 Dayton Highway on Saudi days across from the Fire Hall. Another office is on Brainerd Road. We guarantee our work. Call 332-3339. Online at ejpelton.com. Think of that.
All systems go.
Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. Your advantage is in our name. Customer service. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. Family owned and operated. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services features the highest quality in all your printing and graphic news, including engineering drawings, offset printing and mailing services. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services, your one-stop shop for color graphics and much, much more. Call 6.
How long has it been since we went to Abra?
423-629-1800.
I went yesterday. He was out.
Advantage Printing and
Okay.
Mailing Services. 4031 Brainerd Road in Chattanooga.
Yeah,
4031 Brainerd Road in
Oh,
Chattanooga. Call
hey, look at this also. I've got, this might be actually more interesting. I've got this is not well organized, I'm afraid, but I've got a summary of all, just take this. This is a,
Outside your home or business and in, indoor quality.
that's kind of a, these are people I've gone to repeatedly, some of them.
Okay.
And some are close to maybe saying yes, but I,
Clean HVAC systems using 127 compatible duct buffers instead.
Okay, so-
Constantly address the indoor air quality for your business to help reduce employee risks. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer. Mark and his parents, Jake and Jones Hobson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, indoor professionals. Call 876-9907. 876.
Well, we've already got Hamilton Funeral.
yeah, yeah.
Get the latest
And we've got
news
Capital
and information
Toyota.
now. On your Twitter account, search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's twitter.com and search Hot News Radio. Hot News Radio is a service of Copperhead 1240.
Hi, David Toulis. You saw the story in Nougat.com about a business coalition formed to advocate or lobby for tax reform, pro-growth business policies. A story by Gabriel Chevalier, the young reporter for that local media outlet. It's called Main Street Growth and Opportunity Coalition. The website has nothing on it except a sign-in window to get email posts. The Facebook page indicates there's nothing local about the organization, but it does have a national perspective, and I didn't see anything that suggested that there's a local connection, though someone local is quoted by Gabriel Chevalier. It's Cordia Harrington, president and CEO of the Tennessee Bun Company, said she hopes this coalition will help open new markets to Tennessee-made products. So that's something coming up or in process. Alan Casey, the developer who has that barge opposite the aquarium that everyone complains about, except me. I'm the only person who says I like things like that because they show human effort, human ingenuity, and also the trials and tribulations of business. So I'm not a prig when it comes to visual pollution. I think visual pollution is certainly part of city life, and I don't believe in cleaning everything up. I think things should be messy. Things should be disorganized. There should be a little rust visible here and there. A little mold sometimes would add to the color scheme. These are fine things, and I don't want to be too doctrinaire about having everything look nice and proper. Among his creditors, Alan Casey's, are the Bank of America, the IRS, AT&T. They're listed alphabetically. David Moss, a lawyer, and there's several zombie banks are involved in lending to him or claiming that he has debts to them. James Henry, the lawyer on Broad Street, on the 412 Broad Street, apparently in the story yesterday, said that he is owed at least $1 million in legal fees for over a 10-year period. So that must be a very close friendship with the investor developer saying, "Well, Jim, here, just take $10,000 now, and I know I owe you. I know I owe you another $275,000, but just let me get to that, okay?" And there are other people. Roy Roach, Southern Community Bank, that's in Tullahoma, Wells Fargo, Cisco, quite a few creators of fractional reserve credit. And the picture of Alan Casey's bankruptcy, he's 80 now, is one that is that of the national economy. It is that of national government, where people have floated all kinds of wonderful ideas, bought lands, bought things that are a form of malinvestment, but they have credit, right? They get credit. They're believable. Their narrative draws the interest of the banker there behind his oaken desk and his nice office. Another story on Channel 9's website, channel9.com, talks about Graysville, and there's a fight over phone calls and video recordings of people in government buildings calling into government buildings, and the question, there's a personal relationships and family relationships that are playing out among the combatants at a meeting yesterday in this Tennessee town. And finally, I wanted to get to an interesting story that touches on the assertions I'm making about the gay revolution that seems to be that is being sought to be brought upon Chattanooga out of Washington by the 1% of the 1%, the Poofner lobby, the queer theory backers. Here in Chattanooga, there are a dozen homosexual activists here in town, and probably 10 or 20,000 sympathetic people. And these people are in Washington suing. They're trying to overturn constitutional government. They're trying to overturn the results of referendum or referenda where people of various states declare their understanding to be like that of creation. Their understanding of marriage aligns with creation, with the physical difference between man and woman, and the playing out of love and desire across that divide, the sexual divide that makes man distinct from woman and drawn to her shape, drawn to her person, drawn to her hair, her eyes, her lips, in the joys and delights and burdensome promises, right? Marriage is a promise, and it is a burden sometimes of marriage. And these activists are wanting to overturn reality. They are wanting to overturn reality. They're not following the Euro-communist Antonio Gramsci's advice, though. They're trying to do rather. They've won things in culture. Yes, that they are following Gramsci's theory on that point. But Gramsci disagreed with Stalin and disagreed with the idea of the police state, the Gulag, and the 9 grams, the bullet in the forehead. He did not agree with that and became a dissident and heretic in the Marxist world back in the 20s and 30s. And we have a revolution coming. And my theory about this is expressed in pieces at Nuganomics.com. I hope you will visit me there at my website, of which I'm the editor, the mild-mannered editor with the ink-stained fingertips. Oh, just by the way, if you are thinking that I'm maybe right about my suggestion of getting into your own little business, you need to think about that every day. I think about myself as an entrepreneur and local investor every day. You want to contact Bruce Krebs. He runs the Entrepreneur Source in Chattanooga, which is your link to the franchise world. There's a franchise out there for you that fits your time availability, your budget, your capital, your family, the prospect of family help. Maybe your wife could be involved in a side business aside from what you're doing now. Bruce Krebs runs Entrepreneur Source. Call him at 875-5621. That's 875-5621. And also, I wanted to mention Eric Pelton, who runs E.J. Pelton Company, a tax preparation service, an accounting business, the business that will handle your books once you get started, a local economy player. He is not a chain. He's not a gigantic corporation such as H&R Block or Liberty Tax Service. He is locally owned, locally operated. And he's got an office in Saudi Daisy. It's getting more traffic, so get in now, make an appointment at Eric Pelton's office. You can call the main number if you like, 622-3156. That's 622-3156. And River City Car Exchange is where you can get that Jeep or pickup truck to suit yourself. But I know you've got a teenager coming up and is getting ready to get the learner's permit and then the driver's license, and get your first car for your daughter at River City Car Exchange in Hickson, run by a couple of college chums, Eric. I'm so sorry, the name slipped. Chris Sitterding and Chris Vries, which is a Dutch and a German name, and they'll be glad to take care of you. Good quality cars and trucks for your family's automotive needs. Well, the case I wanted to tell you about is from a man who's an author of one of my favorite books. It's called All Work and No Pay. It came out in the 1980s, published by Spencer Judd here in Tennessee, up on the mountain out of Mount Eagle. And Dr. Paul Hine is a retired ophthalmologist, and $17,000 of his and his wife's name were seized by the Department of Revenue in Missouri. And a recent call to Dr. Hine, who's I consider, we call each other Doctor and Mr. all the time. He is quite my senior, but he always calls me Mr. Toulis, and I guess that's very pleasant. But we respect each other, and I tell him how much I appreciate his book, and I've published chapters from All Work and No Pay on the Intelligent website, the website for the thinking man here in Chattanooga, Nooganomics.com. But what he sent me was a 5-page document that he had filed in the Missouri Department of Revenue versus Dr. Paul and Loretta Hine defendants. And he's raising some interesting questions, and that is, how does a Department of Revenue get jurisdiction over you? How does it get jurisdiction? And, of course, the states vary, and we're looking here just at kind of the general concept, not giving any kind of legal advice to you. But in his first point, it's really kind of a motion. He says that there's no evidence that Mike Kisling, whom I believe is the Commissioner of Revenue, there's no evidence that he has presented proving the Constitution and statutes of the state of Missouri apply to us, the Hines. The record is devoid of facts. All Kisling has are allegations and argument. Commissioner Kisling has not presented any facts to prove the contention, to prove the Constitution and laws apply to us, just because we are physically in Missouri. And Dr. Hine alleges that he and his wife are vis-a-vis the statute that Mr. Kisling is trying to enforce by seizing this money, that he and she are non-taxpayers. Of course, to be a non-taxpayer is different from being a taxpayer. You're made a taxpayer by explicit reference in the ordinance to your activity, your person, or your property. Liability for a tax, you understand, is explicit. It has to be explicit, even though I think many people pretend that they're liable for taxes and demands by commercial government, which are not explicit. There's a sort of implicit understanding that they're liable, but it's not anywhere in the Constitution of the state or the statutes which flow in state authority from the permission granted to it by the Constitution. So Dr. Hine says, we provided Mr. Kisling and his accomplices with affidavits attesting to the fact that there is no evidence proving the laws apply and that we are non-taxpayers. And his requests for proof that he's a taxpayer have gone unanswered. And he says the seizure of the assets were done under 143.902, a statute applicable to taxpayers and only to taxpayers. So how can a commissioner seize assets of someone who is not a taxpayer? You see, that's the question. How do you become a taxpayer? That's a question full of mystery, perhaps, even in your state. One surrounded by poetry, by questions, perhaps. Kisling must be aware that this statute is applicable to taxpayers and only to taxpayers. Due process would seem to require that before $17,000 was seized, pursuant to a law relating to taxpayers, that there be factual evidence that defendants had such a status. Without such evidence, jurisdiction is lacking. And then another point he makes in this little argument is that the commissioner is lying about a claim of exemption. And he's apparently the authority that this Mr. Kisling is exercising is through this claim of exemption. And Dr. Hine, though, the ophthalmologist with the good eye for law and the good eye for economic questions, says that no claim for exemption was made, because you understand that if you claim an exemption, you are claiming that the law applies to you, but just not in this case, or just not under these particular circumstances. Now, there's a difference between being tax immune and tax exempt. What do you think the difference is? Okay. All right. If you're tax immune, that means that the whole taxing body of claims and duties and obligations, the machinery of the tax, does not apply to you. Okay. You are outside the scope of the tax question, the taxing machine. If you're tax exempt, you are not outside the scope. You are within the scope of that taxing authority, except that you have found or claimed to be or given a grant to be exempt. In other words, it applies to you, but it doesn't apply to you, okay? If you're tax immune, it doesn't apply to you, period. And Hine, Dr. Hine, the author with the Tennessee book about honest money, says he is not exempt. He is immune. And then he accuses the commissioner of misconduct, going outside of evidence for his argument about liability of this elderly couple. They happen to be Roman Catholics. Dr. Hine goes to Mass every morning, he told me. And let's see, I highlighted a quote from Meyer versus Meyer. A party seeking relief must have a legally cognizable interest in the subject matter and a threatened or actual injury to have standing. So the other argument that this brief makes is that there's been no injury upon the Department of Revenue in any way, and so there's not standing, there's no offense. So how can there be a dispute if there's not an offense? And he quotes another case back here on page 5, I think it is, that says, a party is injured for purposes of determining whether a party has standing to sue if a legal right of that party is violated. So Dr. Hine is saying that the commissioner and the Department of Revenue in Missouri has no injury and therefore has no standing to make a claim. Very interesting line of arguments. I'm not sure that I would make it myself. I would think it's a bit saucy, a bit bold to make a claim like that. He says, have the rights of anyone been violated by us? Has anyone, or even the Department of Revenue, suffered any loss, damage, or injury at the hands of defendants? Kisling, again, that's the commissioner, doesn't even allege this essential element of a cause for action. If there is no standing, there is no case and no jurisdiction. And then he quotes a famous case, U.S. versus Interstate Commerce Commission. Courts only adjudicate justiciable controversies. In other words, a court has jurisdiction only if there's a real controversy. You can't have a court case if there's no fight, right? There has to be a fight. And so he's a very good writer, by the way. I've read some of his other briefs on the money issue. They're very, very lively, very vigorously presented. He says, finally, the commissioner steadfastly refuses to confront the question consistently raised by us. What evidence is there proving the statutes and Constitution apply to us? See, what he's saying is that somehow that he is in the state of being a natural person. Now, constitutions and statutes may apply to you through your avatar, that is to say, your fictional being, your shadow, the corporation that you have been made into by being born under commercial government. There's that kind of status that follows you. And you know that it's there because hackers and people sending emails from Nigeria to you and credit card companies, they all deal with the avatar, your legal entity. If you are the victim of an ID theft, your flesh and blood person hasn't been stolen. You've not been enslaved and sent off on a sailing ship as a slave to another continent. No, it's just that your legal identity has been stolen, connecting your SSN, your date of birth, your mom's maiden name, your address, your age, and things like that, together with maybe some other element of a database that has been attached by the bad guys. So your identity is perhaps targeted by commercial government. And now I bring this up because of this whole question of jurisdiction, and I'm trying to work my way toward the suggestion I'd like to make to you now, and that is this: if what I want you to see here is that there's this operation of law that is partly a figment of imagination, right? The laws, statutes, constitutions, they're all sort of ephemeral. They are not real things. They're just claims made by people who then act upon other people to take things from them, right? To take their money, to force them to sign their name on forms, to pay money, to beg permissions and things like that. Things that are not done against anyone's rights, okay? Because if you have a constitutional right to do something, you're not bound by any stretch of the imagination to yield that for government. Government doesn't attach itself to your rights; it just attaches itself to other parts of you that are not protected by rights. That's how government works upon you. You do something and you ask permission to do it, so therefore the government has authority because you have involved yourself in commercial government through your persona, through your avatar. And so the question is, okay, that's kind of point one. The second point is touching on this whole gay question. What happens, and I know I'm making some jumps here, but I'm thinking about Bill Knowles, okay? Bill Knowles, let's start with him, put a face on this problem. Bill Knowles is the county clerk, and he's been the clerk for a long time. He's running for re-election. He's a Christian man. He's a man of principle, we are to understand. What happens if next year the High Court says there is no such thing as marriage as traditionally understood? We are forbidding every state to have no marriage statute that excludes the homosexual from the right, ritual, blessings, and prerogatives of marriage, of legal sex, okay? Will Bill Knowles say no when two somewhat overweight men in their 50s who have been living together and copulating every night anally, and they come and ask for a marriage license? Is he going to say no? What will Bill Knowles do? This is a question that is extremely important, and I think you as a voter, if you are a voter, need to ask him this question. Will you say no to the ostensible pretended directive of the High Court? Now you have to understand that the High Court issues opinions, okay? That's all that any decision is. Roe v. Wade in 1973, which ostensibly allowed for the destruction of babies, 50 million babies, is not a law. It's just an opinion. It's just an opinion about a law. And it applies to one case. That's all it does. But everybody, of course, because they're lawyers, everybody in legislatures, because they're lawyers, thinks that somehow they're bound by a High Court opinion. Now, Bill Knowles is not a lawyer, but he may think like one. And if he thinks like one, he's going to take the case out of Kentucky, or whichever case it is that the High Court rules upon, as law to him. This is one reason why you should never vote for a lawyer. Never vote for a lawyer. Always vote for a commoner, a businessman, a man who has to keep a payroll, a man who is not making a living off of torts, not a tourney, right? A tourney is a man who twists things. Don't make a living as a tourney, and don't vote for tourneys, people who twist things. Because they are when all those people in the legislature in Tennessee, when that ruling comes down, I'm willing to bet, at least for the first 3 or 4 years, they're going to say, well, that's just the law. We have to obey it. Well, no, they don't have to obey it. And why do they say that? Let me ask you, why do all these lawyers, these legislators, even Bill Knowles, why are they going to say, we just have to give in? Why do they say that? Why does no one say, we're not taking part in this, we are going to reject this? We are going to intervene and interpose ourselves between the people we serve and represent, which is to say you, and the good people in their black robes and their ink pens that signed the piece of paper that said, this is our opinion, and this morning we published it as a law. Well, if that's going to happen, this law is not a law, it's an opinion, And it doesn't have any effect in Tennessee. It does not have effect on local economy. Now, I make that as an assertion. It's bold, maybe. It's different, maybe, for you. But I want you to think about it. This is called the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate will protect local economy. Bill Knowles can protect local economy by saying, no, sir, I'm not giving two poofters a marriage license. I don't care what your court says, I'm not doing it. And you can't make me. You can't make me. In fact, if you try to make me, I'll call the sheriff. I'll call Jim Hammond, and he'll block off my office and keep you out. You're not going to make me do that. You can go to you know where. I don't think Bill Knowles would say that. He would not tell the federal marshal to go to hell, but he might. I mean, he might think it. But he's a good man. He wouldn't say that. He would say, well, sir, you have no jurisdiction here. This is Tennessee. I'm in Hamilton County. You have no jurisdiction here. Now, the question is, and we're going to get to this, I hope, why is the establishment unwilling to do that? And I'm going to talk about why I think it will be that many legislators, many government agents will not uphold the doctrine of the lesser magistrate to protect marriage. There's an interesting theory behind why they might not. And let's look at that. This is David Toulis. Our show is Nuganomics.com. Nuganomics.com.
NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing.
It's just wonderful that I have 20 minutes to talk about something.
Yeah.
I mean, I just,
Go to MRN.com.
I'm so grateful to say I really am.
Live on Chattanooga's official
He's let me-
NASCAR radio station.
He's let me do something worthwhile, I hope.
Get 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on the 2014 Camry. This is unheard of. 0% financing and a $1,000 rebate on a new 2014 Camry.
Put together a short list of places we might check out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got Trek Bike Shop, Firearms Plus, X-Air Warehouse, Reinhardt Chiropractic, Southern BMX, see if we can get some good.
Go downtown. Look,
Are you tired of working?
Trek
with
is
corporate America
downtown.
Or have recently lost your job?
Charlotte Neighbors
Might consider
downtown.
owning
Right.
a business. If you
Whole
want,
Foods
please
is
call me
downtown.
as I can help you look
Why
at
don't we try-
franchise
I'm
or
not
business
gonna get into
opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the types of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area.
These are right close together, and then not far from
Finding the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment.
Yeah, Mark, yeah,
Bruce
Mark, I'm
Krebs,
sorry.
the
Rock
Entrepreneur
Creek,
Source,
Track,
phone
there
number
it
is
is.
423-875-5621.
The new local guys, we in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She
Yeah,
left.
I've not been down there in a while. I need to stir up some things there if I can. Charlotte Mabry, she does a lot of radio advertising.
Okay, so we got Trek, Rock Creek, and what now?
Trek, Rock Creek, Charlotte Mabry, and then there's a car repair joint that's waiting for us to get on FM before he's advertising.
Okay.
We could just run by there.
Just call 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975.
Okay,
Oh, one more thing. Love your neighbor. Bye.
Charlotte Mabry, explain that to me.
she's a real estate major.
Okay.
Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh made pizza. And in a flash, then it's
Okay, so we got three so far, Trek, Rock Creek, and Charlotte
I'm
Mabry.
talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out of Jet's
Now,
Pizza, or
what we could do is we could just drive down there in two cars and
you'll love Jet's. They use
might be
the
the best
best
thing.
ingredients in a
Are you
family
sure?
recipe. Also,
No,
try
I mean,
the
let's
cheesy
go together.
bread,
Okay.
wheats,
I mean, I always come back through Kingston anyway.
Yeah, that would make more sense. I don't have a whole lot of gas in my car.
Jet's Pizza and Buy Low near the S curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
What's
you can
COS?
order online or have it delivered. Jet's
That's on
Pizza.com. That's
Riverside Drive,
jetspizza.com.
Amicola Highway,
Call
big,
them now. They'll have it ready
the
when you
biggest
get
locally owned
757
office supply store. He's
1660.
I'm
That's
gonna go and see him
1616. Hot and delightful.
in March. He's
Clouds. Jet's
late
Pizza.
doing KTV.
Now that's Italian.
Hello, guess what? Haven't you heard about the new Flight Museum in Hickson? The Hickson Flight Museum is one of the most unique places
Yeah,
you'll
the second
ever
week in
visit.
March, I'll go see
Not
him.
only preserving history, but giving it life. Our exhibits are living, breathing historical artifacts that are regularly maintained and operated. Hickson Flight Museum, offering guided tours, birthday field trips, plane rides, event rentals, and air shows. Located near the Dallas Bay Sky Park, 1824 East Crabtree Road in Hickson, 423-228-2359, the Hickson Flight Museum. Its curators encourage visitors to climb into the pilot seat of the North American T-28 Trojan, peer into the cockpit of a 1946 Taylorcraft, and enjoy a scenic trip over Chattanooga in a 1958 Piper Apache. We're open for individual or group tours, and we welcome school groups, Boys and Girl Scout troops, or any group interested in learning about aviation history and what we do. Please visit our website at hicksonflightmuseum.org, 423-228-2359. Check us out on Facebook. The Copperhead 1240, Southern Rock, Kickin' Country and Tennessee Talk. Copperhead 1240.
Get the latest news and information now. On your Twitter account, search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's twitter.com. Then search Hot News Radio. Hot News Radio is a service of Copperhead 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nugonomics.
Hi, David Toulis. Our show is Nugonomics.com, where we look at books and sometimes quote from them. You will have to forgive me for occasionally reading a paragraph or two. Our show covers local economy and the free market, and I wanted to mention that if you have a lot of wheezing and coughing going on in your shop or business, you might want to have the ductwork checked out for mold or mildew. And the party that you need to engage for that service is Ducts, D-U-C-T-Z, the indoor air professionals, formerly known as Duct Busters. Call 876-9907. That's 876-9907. And Joan Thompson likely will answer the phone, and she will arrange to have a very highly trained crew inspect and handle your situation. Also wanted to mention the idea of Panera Posse. Every Friday morning is Panera, and we round up the bad guys and put the money back in the bank. The money is specie. If you want to know what specie is, you'll have to come next week to Panera Posse, 6:45 a.m. This morning I met at Panera a man named Matt Grubbs. He has a 11-year-old son. He's about 57 or 8, and moved here from Annapolis. Recently arrived in Chattanooga 5 months ago. He looked initially to move away from a high tax and a somewhat oppressive state that has a pro-gay law that makes it difficult for him to exercise his rights of conscience in the business world. And so he made the mistake initially of thinking of Knoxville, but some wise person said Chattanooga is a much better place, and he moved here recently with his son. And he has detected something. Maryland is, of course, near the federal capital, that the barony of the good people, where all life circles around and all existence flows from the organs of that square district. He's found that Chattanooga is a place where there's a lot of grace. He seems to have the impression, Matt Grubbs does, that there's a strong Christian influence here. That people are more laid back, they're more personable, and the sense that there is among the people that God exists is much more powerful than in the world of the Yankee around Washington. There are fewer police. He sees fewer car accidents than he saw living in Annapolis, and he's very glad he's here. And so this is an interesting development for him to be in Chattanooga, where there's a lot of influence of the Bible. Of course, the whole idea of equity and fairness comes from the Bible, and that you could find that under the doctrine of lex talionis, which is the doctrine of equity: eye for eye, tooth for tooth, arm for arm, stone for stone. That is the law of equity. Fairness and justice emerge really in the Christian theory more than any other theory, whether it be materialism or deconstructionism or any other concept. And it's important to note that in our Tennessee Constitution, there's a strong protection of conscience, human conscience, and that's in Article 1, Section 3, that says no human authority can, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the rights of conscience, and that no preference shall ever be given by law to any religious establishment or mode of worship. And you cannot be an atheist and serve in public office. If you're an atheist, deny the state of future awards, you are to be impeached and you cannot hold office. I'm not sure if there's recent law on that, but it is still unamended in the latest copy of the Tennessee Blue Book that I have, which is the 2009 and 10 edition. You have a right of conscience before God, which means that if you have a duty to God to make a living and exercise a constitutional right by making a living, it cannot be taxed. Okay, it cannot be taxed or permitted by the state. In other words, you can't be forced to beg permission to live out your calling, and that means you can be, theoretically at least, a person in the category of non-taxpayer. There are two main categories vis-a-vis taxation: the taxpayer and the non-taxpayer. The free exercise of a constitutionally guaranteed right to lawfully acquire your property, whether that's income or other compensation, by lawfully contracting one's own labor to engage in a lawful or innocent or a harmless activity for lawful compensation, cannot be, and therefore has not been taxed for revenue purposes. And therefore, an individual who is only engaged in lawful or innocent or harmless activities is not subject to any income or other revenue tax, and therefore is not a taxpayer as defined by law, and can therefore be properly described as a non-taxpayer. Well, how do you become a non-taxpayer? Well, the question is really the other way around. How do you become a taxpayer? Well, you become a taxpayer by engaging in an activity that is subject to control by the state. If it's an indirect tax, the thing taxed is the activity, and the amount of payment is based on the level of revenue generated by involvement in that activity. So we're asking about the right of labor, the right to hold assets, the right to earn livings, whether or not they're subject to government. And we looked at a case in court in Missouri, just outside of St. Louis, of a retired ophthalmologist and his wife who were saying, well, we're not subject to your statute, we're not subject to the Department of Revenue at all. Show us where we're subject. And I don't know what's happened in that case, but I did get a copy of the filing that suggested that there is a claim of immunity. And I bring up that case, which is passing on from what I know about it, I'm sure, to discuss this question of jurisdiction and the claims of commercial government, which could be also called consolidated government. In America, consolidated government is comprised of endless corporations, municipal corporations, utility corporations, all of which are required to file comprehensive annual financial reports. And their liquid assets are estimated to be past $118 trillion investment capital by government. So that's called consolidated government. And Walter Burien, the man who outed this whole part of government, is to be thanked for having begun what was a very dangerous line of journalism back in the 1990s. But I bring up the question of jurisdiction because in the gay fight we were asking a moment ago, if the High Court rules against marriage, in other words, redefines marriage to make it a nullity, and to broaden the statute to have marriage bless what is a crime, which, unnatural acts, homosexuality, sodomy, these are in fact crimes, regardless of what Texas versus Lawrence said in 2003. These are crimes against nature. I mean, it's a common law crime, okay, to engage in the act of sodomy, which is something that is a specialty of same-sex couples of the male persuasion. And the question I'm asking is, I'm looking. I've been looking for the past day or two in this whole question of what will happen to the state marriage regime in Tennessee. Well, number one, there will be a return to common law marriage. People will become so angry at the confusion that results, to the humiliation that such a ruling would bring, that they will say, I'm going to marry at common law. I'm not going to marry under statute, a statute which allows two men to be married as I am married to my sweet wife. No, that I'm not going to marry under that, under the ownership of marriage. There will be a rupture of this cartel. The state has a cartel for marriage in Tennessee. We have a statutory regime for marriage, and Tennessee does not recognize common law marriages. But there'll be pressure to have the legislature as a kind of olive branch to have the legislature recognize common law marriage again if the high court favors the gays. And another conflict will be, or another result will be, the role of the lesser magistrate. Will lesser magistrates, as they're called in Reformed theology in its political analyses, will the lesser magistrate refuse and reject an illicit, unlawful, and ungodly order from an alien jurisdiction, a superior authority? And I'm sure that Bill Knowles probably would think that the federal Supreme Court is superior to him, though I would like him to consider that maybe it's not. Maybe here, the federal Supreme Court, with its opinion, is really not an authority at all, unless he grants it authority. Now, the question I'm bringing up is, will states and legislatures and officers in the states, in Tennessee, will they pretend that the high court, the federal high court, in its gay, pretendedly gay ruling, will they view it as superior? And there's a reason to think that many of them will, that there will be a caving in at every point, that there will not be lawful resistance. There will not be what I would call a righteous, even a godly interposition on behalf of you, my listener, vis-a-vis the alien authority, which is what the Supreme Court is. It is an alien authority. And the reason there will be not as much resistance is because of the lawyer class. The lawyer class, which has taken over the country in many ways. Most legislators in the federal level, and probably most of them in Tennessee in the General Assembly, are officers of the court. They are members of the judicial branch, and yet they serve in the executive branch, ostensibly without confusion. I think that there should be a bar on lawyers being elected to office, because they are officers of the court. They are members of the judiciary. The bar serves the judiciary branch. So there's a confusion of powers here, something that I don't know that's been litigated. I'm not sure John J. Hooker has brought it up. He might have in Nashville. But will the state cave to the gays? Well, yes, maybe. And here's why. Because they want to keep up the lie that they own law. They want to keep up the pretense that their arbitrary authority in statute is true and valuable and binding upon you. It is a game that the legal profession plays. It is a game that the political establishment plays against you, my listener, and against local economy. Because local economy, remember, is for marriage. Local economy and prosperity are based on family. Family is in marriage. It is not in gay unions adopting children or hiring out wombs to insert both or one man's sperm into. That's not family. Okay, that is not family. That is an untenable idea. Those instances of that happening are exceptions only. Those are just exceptions. Look how easy it was for you and your wife to conceive, right? You just had fun, and suddenly a baby's coming. There's no science involved. There's no bureaucracy-heavy adoption process with its surveillance and its 40-page forms and home inspections and all that, right? You just make love to your wife and boom, or woo, a baby comes. Or the promise of a baby as her belly gets a little bigger every day and she's looking forward to have another one. Well, the state is going to try to keep up the lie that is arbitrary laws. Its control of reality, if you will, is valid. It is a kind of pretense. We all agree that revenue departments have authority. We all agree that taxing authorities are there, that highway patrol officers have a lawful claim upon us, that police officers can stop us for any reason. We just we keep giving in. We always give in. We always say, well, okay, I'll answer your questions, officer. When you should be keeping your mouth shut. Never answer a question to an officer if he has stopped you without probable cause or a warrant. And so because the people are generous and kind and gracious and a little bit fearful now, we are believing the story, the myth, if you will, the myth of the state, which is that we control everything, we run everything. And the state, very possibly, will give in on the gay question. And Bill Knowles this Christian man will grant a wedding license between two men who are copulating anally. He's going to grant a marriage license to them because he has a stake too in this charade of law that pretends to control all of reality, the public life of our state, the public life of our county, overshadowed against a backdrop of law and statute, which often in its writing makes no explicit claim of jurisdiction. And that's the point that Dr. Hine is raising in his case. He says that he doesn't owe any money to the Department of Revenue in Missouri because there's no explicit liability statute for him or his wife. Where is the liability that says, I am subject to you? Where is it? He says all that he gets from the Department of Revenue commissioner or chief is just claims of jurisdiction. But a claim has to be established in law. If it's a claim for a law figure upon a free man, that claim has to be based on a statute that articulates how that law comes to oversee and make subject a man in a particular field or calling. You see where I'm going with this? You see there is a pretense, and so it's very possible that state governments and the state political actors and state legal actors, state enforcement actors, police actors, right, people who play the part of police, that they will constantly, there'll be some exceptions, they will give in because they want everybody to believe the theory that positive law written in state capitals controls all the people to the very edge of the border of that state as against the next state over. The legal system, the judges, the governor, the legislature, the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, the comptroller of the treasury of our state, they want you to believe that their system is legitimate and valid and that it makes valid claims upon your activity, your progeny, your profit, and that you have to pay here, you have to pay there, you have to beg permission. You can't start anything without getting their approval of it. That's why you should never vote for a lawyer. Lawyers think this way in their minds. The high court's ruling is not an opinion, it's a law. When the high court, if it goes against the federal construct of our union, our republic, if it goes against that, if it upends the republic, finally perhaps, and declares that marriage must include pederasty and homosexuality, then there will be much grieving and much upset. This is a potentially revolutionary act. It is an open revolution against the people, and there will be much bitterness, and there may be some violence in some states, Montana, North Dakota, Idaho. There will be violence against government actors, against homosexuals who have brought this about. The 1% of the 1% who are homosexual, they will overturn what everybody else has, claiming in their PR that, well, we're not trying to take anything from you. We're just trying to enjoy the blessings that you have. Right? That's the theory, the argument, the blandishment made by the homosexual camp. As it says, we just want equality. We just want what you have. We don't want to be under oppression. We don't want there to be a ban against us. These lines of argument are simply specious. There is no ban against homosexual marriage in Tennessee. There isn't one. Sean Phipps at Nougat.com had a video of two lesbians who got married on Market Street Bridge, and a couple that talk for about 5 minutes in a little video presentation about their union. There's no crime in doing that. They were free to be married. They are free to be married. But what is really more important is, and what's really happening, is that the homosexual lobby wants to redefine marriage, the basis of capital. It wants to redefine marriage as the basis of capital, to bring into it the sterile union of two men copulating together. They're copulating anally, and they're calling it love, and they're calling it marriage, and they want it to be blessed by the state. And some of them, the great hypocrites, such as Colin Toby, who gave an interview with Terry Gross at Fresh Air, the gay Irish poet. That's what he does. And and even God is blessing it. He's a man who almost went into the Catholic priesthood. That's what they want. They want to have not just approval. They want it so that you can't say anything against them. They want it to be so that the word sodomy is not used by anybody. In other words, it becomes an outlaw word. You have to say the S word. You can't say sodomy. But sodomy is in the law books. If you read Lawrence versus Texas, the word sodomy is in there probably 50 times. If you read any law book or any legal dictionary, the word sodomy is part of the legal vocabulary. It is a legal word. It is a legal act. It is a crime. Sodomy is a crime against nature. And to say that is not being hateful. You need to realize that I'm talking here dispassionately, without anger, right? Of course, without passion, without being upset. This is simply a term describing what an outlier form of sexual relations. Okay, you have marriage, which is sex, lawful sex between a man and a woman. If it's in marriage, it's lawful. There is liberty, license, joy, commitment, promise, the prospect of children, and the creation of capital. There is security in marriage. The passion of a man is brought to a productive and joyful use. In homosexuality, the outlier sex, right? These are the forms of sex at the margin, outside the camp, outside lawful marriage. And that these outlier forms are, of course, they're all forbidden in Christianity. Fornication, sodomy, bestiality, those are all forbidden. Unclean acts, onanism, that's outlawed in Christianity. Coprophilia, all the other things that homosexuals delight in, they're all outlawed in Christianity, in Western law. But there is a revolution afoot, and Antonio Gramsci, the Euro-communist, is not happy about it because, in his mind, it shouldn't. The revolution for socialism should not be imposed from without, but work its way toward a social revolution from within. And we've had that, of course. That's already happened thanks to the liberal church and thanks to public education and even industrialization and its creation of a employee servant class, which is most people. We don't have many independent entrepreneurs anymore because the entrepreneurial spirit has been corralled by the corporate concept and the master-servant relationship, which is the legal act of employment. That's how everybody's an employee, everybody's a servant now. You have very few real masters. So again, let me see if I can boil this down. Will state actors in Tennessee cave in to a pro-gay ruling from the High Court? Will Bill Knowles cave in? Will Bill Knowles stand his ground as a Christian and as a intervening local magistrate? Well, let's hope so. But there's a lot of reasoning why officials will just give in to this and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's a lie. But the reason they don't want to do that is because they don't want to disrupt the paradigm, the concept, the philosophy that our state law controls all things. And we believe in law. We believe in the rule of law, and therefore we have to give in to the homosexual, the queer theory that says now we have to issue marriage licenses to two men or two women who want to marry. The state has an interest in people believing that its arbitrary authority is real, that these chains of paper by which they're bound are in fact chains of iron. And so these state actors will just give in to the national ruling. The state will give in to gays because it wants everyone to believe that its statutory structure is in fact a binding law, and that opinions from judges are in fact binding law. What do you think about that? What do you, my listener, think about that? Well, I hope you are taking confidence in local economy, because local economy doesn't brook this idea. Okay, local economy says we stand up for our rights. We stand here as Chattanooga unhappy with the work of the good people. And you know what, good people? We've got our own plan. We're going to go our own way. We are Chattanoogans. We believe in self-determination. Self-determination. How about that? You know, the Palestinians are wanting that. What about Chattanooga? Can Chattanooga get self-determination? I sure hope so. And maybe you and I, you my listener, and I, David Toulis, your host, can work on that some more. Think about it some more. Please join me every day here at Nuganomics.com at Copperhead 1240 from 1 to 3, weekdays 1 to 3. And the archive is at ustream.tv/channel/Copperhead 1240. David Toulis.
Good show.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for
I appreciate that. Thank you.
NASCAR Sprint Cup Series.
Difficult topic to cover, and I think you
Well,
did very well.
Coverage continues
Yeah,
Sunday here at Live on the
I didn't know anything else to say. I mean, that
Voice
was all I could say. That's just what I had to offer.
Go to MRN.com.
I hope it